base metal, which base metals are usually like your tins and aluminums. They're usually a whitish color metal. And gold fill has a really thick plating of gold on top. So it takes a lot longer for it to wear through. And you don't really see a whole lot of that these days. It's more in the older stuff. I have a laser welder, so I can use spot techniques to be able to work on that if I need to add a jump ring and convert a pair of earrings or something like that. So they can be worked on to a degree, but not like your regular metals. And then just like rhodium plating using electricity, you can have gold plating. Gold plating usually involves a couple more steps. For example, if you wanted your silver ring to look gold, you'd have to plate it in copper, because then the copper will take the gold plating. Usually it doesn't just happen straight to the silver. So it can be a little bit involved, and just like any plating, it can rub off, especially at the high rub places. At the bottom of the ring where you're touching things, your glasses, your table, your hands, here between your fingers perhaps, at the top where you rub against your everyday things. Those will be the first places that plating wears off of. One of the most common things that gets plated that you'll probably come across are going to be the chains, especially nowadays because gold is like cleared almost to $3,000, guys. When I was doing my apprenticeship in 2001, it was like $350 to $400. So it has exponentially gone up in value, which is why quality is such an important thing.
Is that per ounce?
Yes.
Also, just so you guys know, there's like 2 or 3 things in the entire case that are plated, so we don't have a ton of stuff that you guys have to worry about that.
Oh, that was going to be one of my questions. If I would love to know which of our artists and which pieces are plated.
The silver Hawk House stuff that is with the stone, which is like a few rose quartz pieces at X.
Yeah, let's sidebar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Outside of gold, and we've got silver, which is a softer metal, which is also less expensive, which is why we have so much silver jewelry out there. Because it's less expensive, you can really make bigger pieces and have a little bit more of a statement. Sometimes they're hollow, which, you know, saves in weight, but it doesn't really save in durability. And with silver being relatively inexpensive, having like a solid bangle bracelet, for example, is a great option because you're working with something that's solid, and the bigger it is, especially like a bracelet, it's not going to be like the size of this little strap. It's going to be much bigger than that. So that holds its shape a lot easier from getting bent up. The cool thing about silver is that it can tarnish. Now, some people hate that, and so they have it nickel plated, which is basically like the awful chrome of jewelry plating. Nickel is awful. People have a lot of allergies to it. It is super, super shiny. So when you see a silver ring that's like mirror finish, then it's probably got a nickel plating. And not that that's a big deal, but if it's a ring and needs to be sized, for example, I can't replate nickel. So there would be a color difference there at the sizing spot from the cleanup section, but that's just something to be aware of. Has anyone ever had their finger turn green? Yeah. That turns out it's because of copper. It's the copper is mixing with your body chemicals. And if you have never had issues with your finger turning green from different materials, and all of a sudden you do start having issues, it could be the lotion that you're using. A lot of chemicals are in products, and even though they're mild, they still can react to other things, and copper is going to be one of those. And copper is copper is a pure metal, so you'll see that there, but that's where you get into brass and bronze. Brass and bronze both have copper in them. Brass is going to be a little bit more of a yellowy tone, so it's probably the closest looking to 14 karat yellow gold. And then bronze is going to have a little bit more of that brownish tone to it. But all of those do have copper, so they could potentially turn a finger green or part of a chest.
So is all silver mined, or is there like some way, I don't know if that's a silly question.
Synthesize?
silver?
I have not heard of synthesized silver. However, all the metals that are in the ground that we refine and use for jewelry can be refined again and again and again. We are lucky enough to have a precious metal refinery here in the Portland area, and I do use them. At the end of the year or whenever I need more money, I'll take the scraps, which for me are the little pieces I've cut out from sizings, the rings that have been traded in from redesigns or just like towards a project or whatever, broken chains, whatever. I can take all those things to the refinery, and they use their process to separate the pure metals from the rest, and I can either have them write me a check or give me my pure recycled metal, my metal that I gave them, just fixed up and returned. It's not dumped into the system, it is what I gave them. And so that's really exciting that jewelry can be such a recyclable and renewable resource, especially as things go up in price, to be able to have stones that you can reuse, to be able to have metal that you can melt down and reuse.
We get a lot of questions about if our like recycled or just silver, sterling silver pieces have any nickel in them. I've Googled
It is
and
quite
I've
possible.
Yeah.
It depends on the company. Fine silver is the full Monty, the 99.99% silver. Sterling silver is 925 or 925 parts out of 1,000, and that little extra bit is copper. Nickel is becoming really popular as a money-saving thing within the industry. A lot of us hate it, and so when we're talking to the people we order metal from, we're either getting recycled metals that we know the chemical makeup of. Excuse me, with your sterling silver, is there a nickel content? With your white gold, are you putting nickel in there? Because they're trying to cut corners in all sorts of different ways all across jewelry making. One of them is using nickel. And yeah, so that's something that we try to avoid.
Yeah.
Hey, can we make a note to?
If someone, like a customer, has a allergy to nickel, should we warn them about all the 925 sterling that it
Yeah.
might have a nickel content? Because I have previously told people that it's solid sterling silver because I didn't know.
It very well could be. Solid is just that it is complete all the way through.
Okay.
The cup is not solid, but the paper is made out of is, for example.
Right.
But unless you talk to who processed the metal, you won't know for sure.
Okay.
We're gonna check in with our
Usually it is just that bit of copper added in, and the copper adds the durability because straight up silver is really soft. As far as allergies go, there are two metals that are hypoallergenic. Platinum is one of them, and titanium is one of them. And that brings us into just one second. And
Is that hypoallergenic?
no.
Which one?
There is stainless steel,
Yeah.
which, can be hypoallergenic, but as a metal itself, platinum for the fine jewelry is going to be the way to go, and for the alternative metals, titanium is going to be the way to go. And just a side note on alternative metals, those are going to be your titanium, your cobalt, your stainless steels, all those unusual metals. They are harder than steel, and those are what my tools are made out of. So I cannot cut them off your finger, for example, if you bust a knuckle. They actually have to be broken in two parts to be separated versus, because they can't be bent out of the way. So just a note on alternative metals that they are super, super hard, but that means if something happens, they can't be worked on. If your finger size changes, you have to order a new size, the whole 9 yards.
Difference in value in terms of recycled metal versus like non-recycled
Makes no
metal?
difference.
Doesn't make a difference?
No.
Okay.
It is still considered 18 karat, 14 karat, 10 karat, whatever. It's valuable, I think, for people who are eco-interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's value on that end, but not on the monetary value of it.
Yeah, would somebody be able to like do a test to see if there's nickel in something, or do you just have to trust the source?
There are some tests, I suppose, but they don't really tell you what the combination of metals is. This here is a metal testing kit, and it comes basically with this little slab And what you do is you basically rub your piece on there, just a little, and you might be able to see a little bit of metal rubbings on here. And what this is an acid test. So this has, let's see here, we've got silver, platinum, 10, 14, 18 karat golds in here. And what we do is we do a rubbing. We take one little drop and put it over that rubbing, and we watch to see what happens. And what we're looking for is for the metal to stay looking the way it does. You want it to look like you're looking through a pool and it's still there. If it's not the right combination, then it usually fades away and kind of dissolves, disappears type of thing.
What is the slab? Is it what kind
I believe it's ceramic.
of ceramic? So it's not damaging.
No, but this is acid, so hence the paper towel test. But yeah, so for example, if I have a ring that comes in and it doesn't have a carat marker on the inside and I have to size it, I need to know what kind of gold to put in there. So I would rub it on my stand, I would do my best guess first, so I don't waste my time, but then I can mess around with going up or down depending on what I think it would be, and to get a straight answer there.
Nice.
And yeah, so I already talked about the alternative metals. All right, so settings. That's where this book had some really good pictures in it. Okay, at the top part, I've got the top flags are setting styles, and the side flags are something that I want to talk about durability with. So on the top, you've got something like bezels, which are when the metal goes all the way around the stone. You'll see a lot of prongs, where it's like the little claws that hold on to it. And then you've got something like a tension setting, where it looks like it's floating in mid-air, and it's just like the tension of the circle holding it in. You don't see much of those because they can't be sized or really worked on, because you need that tension for it to stay. However, the others are all great. One thing that I will say about prongs is this guy here in this bottom corner is a basket setting. And one of the things about a basket setting is it has a brace between the prongs. So if these are the prongs going vertical to hold your stone in, if there's nothing attached between them, then that means they've got all this room to slide around as you bump up on things and move your hair out of the way and all of that stuff. They can just slide around because there's nothing to keep them in where they are. Where a basket setting, or even a solid one that just has a scoop, something that has something just underneath the widest part of the stone, that's going to give a lot more strength to the prongs to be able to stay in one place and hold them down properly. They all have pros and cons, of course. Prongs, you see much more of the stone, but prongs can get snagged on things. But honestly, you can snag your finger on your sweater, so if a prong snags, it's not the worst thing in the world, and it shouldn't be very surprising. So it always surprises me when that's one of the common issues. People talk to me like, my ring snagged on my sweater. Well, yeah, I probably did.
Yeah.
It's got a little piece of metal there.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously as jewelers, we try to make sure that the prongs are bent down all the way onto the stone, but depending on how gigantic they are, even if they're pressed down on the stone, they can still snag. So that's just something to be aware of. Is one, is it lifted up off the stone? We can fix that. We can push that back down or tighten your stones. But if it's just gigantic, we've got plenty of room to work with, and we can wear that down, you know, with tools versus life. Bezels, they're probably the strongest way to hold a stone. They're super durable, but they do cover up all the edges, so you hide a bit more of your stone that way. And then there's all sorts of like creative ways to set stones too. One of the things about stones here, or settings, that I wanted to point out is like this right here. This is a great one for you. This is the protective settings. So like here, this could be a pearl, this could be an opal, whatever, but it's got these decorative pieces sticking up, which can snag on their own, but they are in the way. So there's not something that can directly get to this stone. This one's similar. It's got a cage running over it, which is decorative, but that's a protective setting, so unless you've hit the top that has been hard enough to hurt the stone, you're protecting the stone because of those protective settings.
Can we see that on this side too?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Some things to avoid, which is probably going to be like one of your big things. The biggest one is probably what I call a tree on a hill. It's basically a small band, and then you've got your stone just set right up on top, like a tree on a hill. And that just leaves you can whack it from any direction, and depending on how thin the band is, it can break off completely. So tree on a hill is not great. One of the things that we do to help with that is either just bring it down into the ring, so all the way down to the finger. So now part of the band is giving some structural support and changing the height difference. So it's bringing your stone down so there's not much of a difference to how high it is away from everything else. One of the other options is what we call a cathedral, which is basically like ramps that come up towards the stone. Sometimes they're just metal and you can see like a little opening and everything, and sometimes they're solid, filled with stones, the whole 9 yards. So that's just a protective way to do that stone on a hill, but still have that height there. One of the other things to watch out for would be something that's really, really dainty, because dainty is really popular. I think partly dainty is popular because of the price point, but with price comes responsibility. And by responsibility, I mean lots of maintenance on something that's dainty. It gets bent out of shape much easier, so you have that to straighten out. You've got shared prongs, so you'll see like marquee, the boat-shaped stones. Maybe they'll be in a band and there's just one little piece of metal between each stone holding them in. So now one piece of metal has been drilled in this side to hold that point and drilled in this side to hold that point. And now it's pinched in as well. So that's all that's holding the whole ring right there. So those are all weak spots. The biggest help for that is either having more prongs. I usually suggest 4 per stone, even on the little guys. One, because individually it's a lot easier to replace and repair, and just less hassle with having to tighten them all the time. The other third thing that I would say as far as something to keep an eyeball out is pave. Pave, micro pave. They look so pretty with all that glistening, just like layer over everything. It looks like all the diamonds are touching. But everywhere those diamonds are is a hole. And so you have just taken out structure from the ring that it's in. So not only have you removed metal from underneath, that's the structural part of the ring, but the metal on top is like as thin as a fingernail or even less. So there's not much holding these stones in, which means it's just that much faster for it to get worn down and need to be rebuilt. So it's more of a maintenance issue. And depending on how strong the ring is made and how big the holes are drilled, if you don't have any structure underneath, you're going to have a wibbly wobbly ring. So the more stones fall out, the more torqued the ring will get. So as pretty as those are, the multiple diamonds and the shared prongs, those are things to just be aware of as maintenance issues down the road, along with the broken stones type of thing. Let's see here. Anything else on stones?
Yeah, it'd be really helpful if we brought up some of the theory while she was talking about this, so we could look at examples and like specifically the settings and everything.
And
We're really low on time right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So we can.
And I just have one more thing. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about care real quick. The best way to clean your jewelry at home is with a soft toothbrush and mild soapy water like you would use at the sink. It can work on pretty much any jewelry except pearls and other things that are strung on silk or thread. The thread can stretch, so you don't want to get it wet. So in those cases, you're using just a very mildly damp cloth just to wipe things down. And with pearls and things that are heavy, you want to lay them flat so the weight of it doesn't stretch everything out as well. Other than that, I would just